Hello, everyone. Welcome to the African Instrument Studies. This is the podcast where we explore the African music instruments and also talk about those that double down as genres. I'm your host, Kosomachuku, and today we're excited to explore the Oja flute, an aerophone instrument from Nigeria, West Africa. And joining us today are our beautiful guests, Precious Ihezue and Emmanuel Ogala, the president of the African Music Library. Please say hello to our listeners.
Hello, everyone.
Hi everyone, I am excited to join in this conversation and most especially to learn from our co-guest, Precious.
Glad to have you guys here and looking forward to the discussion. Let's get right into it. Let's start with the basics. Where does this instrument come from and what are the histories and if there are any myths surrounding this beautiful instrument? Precious.
Thank you very much, Kosi. The Oja is a flute and an aerophone. It's a wooden, very deep traditional music instrument of the Igbo people and is predominantly found in the southeastern part of Nigeria among the Igbos. It's a slender looking flute, not so lengthy, about 6 to 12 inches. Hand carved, particularly hand carved from bamboo. Some people use bamboo, some people use the imba wood. And those who use the imba wood prefer this kind of wood because it has a cavity. It has a center cavity in it. So the Oja has basically four holes, two by the sides for tuning the sound with the fingers, and the mouthpiece that leads to the terminal hole. And in the Igbo land, the player of the Oja, it is called an Obu Oja. And where Oja originated from is not exactly known. Nobody can exactly trace down, oh, this is the place it came from or the year. But historians believe it's as old as the Igbo culture. And some believe it first came about in Oga. Oga is a local government, it's a place in Anambra. But we do not know. That's just what history says about it. And for me, there are lots of myths about the the Oja. And that's because of the spirituality tied around it. Some people believe that the Oja calls its player. Some believe that, although it's not just a belief, it's true. I would say it's for a fact that it's the voice of the gods, and that's where it got its name, the Igbo talking flute. It's one instrument that doesn't just play sounds, but it talks. But what it says is cryptic, that you have to be deeply connected to decode or interpret what the Oja is saying. And for cultural context of it, it plays a very key role in traditional settings, in events, in ceremonies. Historically, at a point, it was even used for communication. There are times that the sound of an Oja flute would signal maybe a gathering or welcoming of prominent person in a communal gathering as well. So that's just the basics of the Oja.
Thank you so much for that insight into the basic information or basic knowledge of this beautiful instrument. So Emmanuel, can you briefly tell us more about the role of the Oja in, the traditional Igbo society?
Yeah, I think that my experience, the Oja, it's one of the most integral musical instruments in the Igbo culture. It's one of that musical instrument that you hear and it just strikes a chord. It just reminds you of Igbo culture. I don't know that there's any other instrument that gives off that feeling. And it's one instrument that you would see that is traditionally only produced within the Igbo land and is up till date is still made by people who are called to make it, and it's still made by hand, not machine produced. Special or Jamaicans with um, very specific way of making these instruments. That's kind of attaches serious spirituality and significance to it in terms of how important it is to the Igbo culture. Any rich Igbo cultural gathering that should connote some form of happiness would definitely involve the use of Oja. I think it involves royalty, it involves anything of serious significance to the community, it will definitely involve the Oja. And Oja is one way where people, its players, are held very highly in the community, and it's one instrument where you can use to demonstrate oratory. In the Igbo tradition, there are also people, most especially men, who are known for their oratory, just their ability to talk and move people into tears, or move people into deep thoughts. Oja is one of those instruments where the users, the players, and Oja player can communicate, can make speeches, can just like Precious said earlier, even though it's made with its very high pitch sounds, and it's cryptic because what the Oja says to everybody, it's different from what people perceive what the Oja player is playing differently. Everyone receives it differently, just like speaking in tongues in churches. People who are listening may not really understand it, but they would perceive it differently. So an Oja player, can be praising a king, but the actual words that he's using to praise the king through the Oja flute will be interpreted differently by the listeners. So I believe, I think the Ogbojas are really custodians of the Igbo tradition, and the Oja itself embodies the Igbo culture through music and musical instrumentation.
I totally agree with you. I think also that's where this part of the Igbo tradition called Imambem comes in, because it's always paired with the Oja instrument. When the Imambem is going on, you also see the Ogoja, playing and accompanying the whole poetic chant. So thank you so much for that insight. Yeah. So the Oja instrument is often associated with the spirituality of the Igbo people. You mentioned that earlier, also, Precious. So can you elaborate and throw more light on the significance of this instrument in this aspect of the Igbo culture, and also its role in community building? Because I also hear it's used to render subtle advices, since it's like a talking instruments known by the Igbo people. So, its role in community building and connection to the general tradition of the Igbo people.
So, for the spirituality of the Oja, personally, I would like to tie the deep spirituality of Oja to the wood. right? In Igbo land, music instruments made from wood, such as the oja or the ekwe, they usually carry deep cultural and spiritual significance. And the mystery lies in the belief that these instruments are not just merely tools for entertainment, but sacred mediums that can communicate with the spiritual world. They are believed to have more of a direct link to nature and the ancestors, because the trees used to carve these instruments are often seen as living beings with spiritual essence. So look at the Oja. This small hand carved wood is beyond a musical tool. It's serving as a medium for communication, storytelling, and most importantly, spiritual expression. And in the spiritual realm, for the Igbos in the Igbo land, the Oja plays a part in connecting the physical and the spiritual. For instance, during religious ceremonies, it's used to invoke ancestral spirits. I'm sorry if I sound diabolic. It's and communicate with deities and set the spiritual ambience. Its cryptic message is something that can only be understood by the being communicated with. And some believe that it's intoxicating, and beyond being a belief, it's something that happens when the Oja plays. It incites action. You may be in an Igbo setting, an Igbo ceremonial setting, and you see an Oja player trying to, hail a dignitary or an important person, and this person starts to spray this Oja, Ubu Oja, with money. He may not understand what he's saying, but he's feeling it. That feeling, it's that connection, that spirituality that this Oja tune, this very unique tune comes with.
Thank you so much, Precious. That's really, really interesting. I think I now understand why it's so much appreciated by Igbo people. It's tied to nature and all. So that's how quite an eye opener. So that was this thought I was having earlier, about types of Oja, where you have the Ojukwe, the Ojokolobia, the Ojama, and the Ojigede. Say the Ojukwe is usually associated with women dances, and then you have the Ojokolobia, which is associated with passage rights for men in the Igbo community. The Ojigede, which is always played with dual instruments, is associated with sadness, burials, and solemn atmosphere. Then you have the Ojamang, which is very popular. I'm sure most of us must have seen or heard the Ojamang if you've been to an Igbo traditional ceremony. This is usually high pitched and played to accompany masquerade performances. So, but now looking at this instrument, there is just the a small oja which is high pitched, and then you have the medium sized oja which is medium pitched. Personally, I believe that these types of oja is just based on the context that are being used, like the rhythms that are being played for different performances or ceremonies. Just like you can play the rhythm that you play during women dances in men's passage rites. I don't know if you understand that. But so that's like what picks the type of order. So it's based off of the rhythm that is being played rather than the physical attributes, the shape, the size, or the type of food that is being used to make this variety of order. That's just what I strongly feel depicts the type of order. Emmanuel, I don't know if you have anything else to add to that.
Yes, thank you, Kosi, for that explainer. Yes, traditionally, yeah, we've seen these three types of oja, and it does used in different ways for different ceremonies, based on or hypothetically, I would say based on the kind of sound that they produce. So you just don't pull out an ojukwe into a spiritual ceremony, some that should be solemn, you know. Ojukwe is, what will you most commonly see? Say you're walking around the streets in Enugu and a dignitary is passing and he has a praise singer and the praise singer is following the dignitary. The Ojukwe is what that person would use to sing to a dignitary, maybe a politician or so a businessman that is wealthy, or even a king on very happy days. Say, for instance, an aloe has made in the community, and that needs to be communicated to the community through by the town crier, who sometimes can use or jazz in assemblies. If you watch a lot of Igbo movies, you would hear that Oja play when someone like Chiwetalagu will say Alueme. Um, yeah, it's very solemn, and the pitch of the sound that it produces just gets you feeling very solemn. It's low valence and low energy kind of sound that it produces just gets you in that very solemn mood. And when you hear that, you know that there's something wrong. It's also different from the kind of solemnity that we come with the spiritual when we get into very deep cultural spiritual things that sometimes they would even say would exclude the women, would have to talk to the more and stuff like that. So, and they all have different shapes, and these shapes help them produce those kind of sounds. And they also have the Ogbojas that specialize in different kinds of Oja ceremonies. So there are Ogbojas who are very good at praise singing. They communicate their thoughts in praises through Oja, but they're unable to play that very melancholic tones that is required when spirituality or solemnity is demanded. And you also mentioned the ojigere, which is used in pairs, the male and the female oja singing in the call and response arrangement. That is not very common. In my experience, I haven't seen a lot of that traveling around eastern Nigeria.
Mm,
But yes, I've seen a lot of the ojukwe and the ojamao being used in action.
mm. Thank you very much for that, Emmanuel. Thank you, Precious, also for giving us insights about its tied to the spirituality of the Igbo people. So thank you both for your contribution so far.
I have a question, and this is for Precious.
Okay.
Can anyone just become an Uboja? Does do you have to be selected at birth? That's something I really don't. I would like to know.
Okay, the act of performing with the Oja, just like one of the myths surrounding the Oja, claims the Oja can call its bearer. Some learn it, but with what I've seen, I haven't really seen so many people that are amateur in the crafts learning the Oja. It's sometimes a gift, sometimes it's something that runs in a family. You have to be skilled, you have to be connected because of how spiritual it is. And with history, with what I've seen though, people who are born with the gift of playing the oja do way better than people who learn it. People who learn it usually do it just for performances, for shows. I don't know if that answers your question, Emmanuel.
Yeah, it does. But then it then brings up a new question. How do I know that I've been
Yeah.
called? How do you know you're called? Is there like an initiation rite? Is there some things you have to do? Yeah.
It's just like, okay, let's say a music artist who wakes up one morning and he feels that his calling is music. You can't run away from it. It will come to you. If you are called, it will come to you. You may just wake up one day and crave to play a roja. You go to the market and buy it. That's how it works. It will come to you.
Mm, okay. Yeah. That explains. Because you were going to say stuff.
Yeah. I think that's a very, very interesting question. I've never really thought about it till now because there's this thing in Igbo culture that is called awo. So it's like uh, you having, I think it's about having the gift to see, like, have visions or something. So I think it's that's how this scale of Oja works. When someone that that just wakes up and said, "Okay, I want to go and learn the Oja," comes and start learning the Oja. It takes you years, but you can never be that skilled to perform the Oja to move people. But then when you have the calling to be an Oja, it's easy for you to learn. Just like Precious said, you might just wake up one morning and just have the craving to go and buy the Oja and start playing, right? But then just a little tutoring, and then you are the absolute best around, and you play the tunes that move a lot of people. So I think that's how this born with the skill to play the Oja works. I don't know if that sheds more light on your question.
Yes, it does. And one more question I have for you as well and Precious is, yeah, I haven't seen a female Ugboja. In all my, life and experience with the Igbo culture, I haven't seen a female Ugboja. Is that something that is cultural, or is it just that women are not interested in Oja?
Mm, I don't think that there are restrictions around who plays the Oja. There might be maybe in the olden days, just like you have in the Yoruba culture where you have restrictions for people that play the talking drum, but generations and generations keep coming, and then those wall of restrictions keep crashing down. People are breaking boundaries. So right now, I don't think there's. I think I've seen one female Uboja. I think that's the only time I've seen a female playing the Oja. That was in my secondary school. There was this girl in our school then. The school used to create chance for her to perform in school events just to showcase her talents. I think that's the only time I've seen a female Uboja. I don't know if Precious has had any experience.
The existence of male Ubojas is surpasses that of female.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, Precious, if you bought an Oja right now and decided to, be an Oja, would you be taken as seriously as the male Oja?
Really, honestly speaking, I have no interest in being an Uboja.
No, but in a hypothetical situation where we say you wake up one day and say you're called and you want to play, will you even be allowed to play? From what Coach is saying,
Yeah, sure.
you will be allowed to play, but you probably will you be taken as serious as the male? Maybe you might not because people are just more used to the male Obojas.
Yeah.
I would be allowed to play and I would be able to play. The only thing I would say would be that I may not be able to play in certain settings. When it comes to spirituality, it's more like it favors the men when it comes to traditions. So there are settings where I may not be able to play as a woman. So that's just it.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. I do see how that's going to happen because in Igbo culture, in many settings, when it involves a lot of spirituality, women are excluded.
So, moving on in our conversation, let's talk about modern adaptation of this Oja in contemporary music. Emmanuel, the Oja flute has gained popularity worldwide with many modern musicians adapting it to their sounds. Typical popular example is Casey's Oja piano. So, can you share some other examples of innovative uses of this Oja instrument in modern music?
Yeah, apparently the Oja instrument is one that what Casey did in Oja piano is something that is we're beginning to see recently, and it's new. Trying to transport the Oja and mix Oja with other musical, ideas. The Oja is traditionally paired with an ogene or an igba because of how culturally significant it is to the Igbo community. So it's not until recently that we began to see these fusions of adding Oja to other kinds of beats. And I can't remember from the top of my head right now, but I know other people have tried, fusing Oja with, jazz in jazz and other forms of music. But Oja shines the most. It's still an emerging field. It's still a budding field where people are trying to place Oja in this context where the great great forefathers of the Igbo culture did not envision. But up until this day, I still see Oja more within an Igbo setting, and not just any gathering of the Igbos, but a serious, significant, culturally significant gathering of the Igbos.
Mm, yeah, right. That's amazing. So my next question goes to Precious because she's more grounded in this field. So Precious, do you see the Oja flute losing its traditional value as more contemporary artists fuse it to their sound, to their modern sound? Do you think it's going to lose its value culturally?
Well, the Oja flute's incorporation into contemporary sounds doesn't necessarily mean it will lose its traditional value. In fact, I can see it as an evolution that helps preserve its essence while making it relevant to newer generations.
Hmm,
Though, however, I fear two things. And the first is loss of its cultural context. When used primarily for entertainment without regard for its original purpose in ritual, storytelling,
hmm,
or traditional ceremonies, Dioja risks being stripped of its deeper cultural and spiritual meanings. And secondly, would be displacement of the traditional Oja masters, the Obu Ojas.
hmm,
As more contemporary artists use digital samples of Georgia or even adapt it for modern music, traditional players might just be sidelined at the end of the day. That's just my thought of it.
hmm. That's an interesting thought. I was reading an article about a conversation with Gerald Eze. He's like a popular Oja player, and he's in the Faculty of Arts in Unizik, Namdazik University, Oka. He was talking about the Oja losing its value, but where he was touching was that people do not respect the essence of what these instruments used to be. Now people use Oja to beg for money and just play anytime, anywhere without regard. So I think your point is valid about displacement of the Obo just because of the advancement of technology. So thank you, Precious, and thank you, Emmanuel. We'll go on a quick music break and we'll be right back. Thank you, Emmanuel and Precious, for sharing your invaluable thoughts with us today. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in. Join us next time on the African Instrument Studies for more exploration of African musical instruments.
Thank you, Kosi, for having us. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.